Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to episode 110 of Word Ninjas Live. I'm your host, Charles, coming to you tonight with Will,
Hello.
Justin,
Hello, I'm here.
and Calvin.
Hello, everyone.
And we're coming to you tonight to talk about Hartford Comic Con, the last convention of our convention year and season. And as we do, we like to do a full review of the conventions that we attend. And we're going to kick things off with kind of a new style of how we're organizing these things. Rather than the good, the bad, and the ugly, we're doing the inspired, what creatively blocked us, and then lessons learned. So starting things off with the inspired and what various positive aspects, events, interactions, and ideas came about during the 3 days we were all gathered in Hartford. The first one is we got yet another corner booth, allowing for 2 directions of traffic, which was really nice, and I think definitely helped out considering the attendance for the weekend and how many people came into the vendor area.
Especially since we were right near the elevators and escalators that led down to the vendor area. People pretty much had to walk past us to get in.
Yeah, there are only 2 ways to get into that vendor area, basically, and we were directly in front of one of them. And I think Will mentioned it on Friday. It was our 3rd corner booth in a row for like 3 times in a row.
Yeah, we kind of lucked out this year.
We've become somewhat spoiled, I fear.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, things will get shaken up next year anyway, so it'll be good.
I already got ideas as well as to how we could evolve the display to be more space conscious in regards to Justin's concerns. Or at least kind of a negotiation to balance it out. But that's for another episode, or just maybe an NSFWN episode, there we go. Because chances are it's not going to be PG-13. And in regards to the main vendor floor, it was all one main vendor floor, and I thought it was well spaced. There was definitely plenty of aisle width, so there could be lanes of traffic for vendors on both sides, and then people going in between. And you could kind of cut across different aisles and rows as you saw fit. It was pretty navigable. The area over by the panel room and the gaming room, though, felt a little bit off to the side in comparison, mainly because I didn't really go over there that much myself. I'm not sure about others.
It wasn't so much off to the side more than it was like basically away from everything else. It almost feels like the game room and the panel room were afterthoughts, the way they were placed. But I think the whole configuration was a little strange, but probably that's just due to how the lower portion, the lower level of the Excel Center just happens to be. So I think that was just circumstance. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it had a very basement feel, especially over in that area, because where they had the panel room was technically the Excel Center's loading dock. that very same area the night before we had pulled our cars in and were unloading stuff for the vendors' room. And then they just put temporary walls up and partitions up to make the panel room and game room.
It somewhat worked, though. I mean, with the space that they had provided. We'll get more to the stuff that I didn't care for in the room when we get to the creative block section.
You mean you had issues? You had concerns and critiques?
Yeah, we'll get to that. In fact, I don't think there's a line item on that, so I may add that really quick.
In regards to our table, the writer's blocks that we have were actually very well received this time round. I'm not sure if it was the new signage that we added or just it's actually starting to click with people. But it was nice to see that people were appreciating our little writer's blocks, and everyone who was able to hold one thought that they were adorably squishy. And some even walked away with some, which was very nice. Although that means that Ed now has to start making more at some point. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing for him.
He has a new shiny sewing machine to play with, so.
True.
And plenty of fabric.
Yay.
It's always interesting that every con that we go to, different things are popular. And maybe that's just because our volume is so low that there's a low signal-to-noise ratio. But, you know, the writer's blocks were well received this time. Last time we sold like a ton of buttons and even a bunch of magnets. Like somebody came and ordered like 12 magnets and we had to cut them all out and make them on hand.
And I think one of the last few conventions was also a lot of the blind button bags went. I forget if that was Inconceivable or Kineticon.
And that only makes inventory management extremely frustrating. It's a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
But that's why we have an Etsy store to sort of fill out all the gaps. So if there's stuff there that's not readily available, they can get a coupon for the Etsy store and get it online.
Yep. Excuse me. Let's see. The next two, I think, well, the next one at least I can only really talk to since Ed is not available at the moment, but there were after parties and events outside of the XL Center, just within Hartford, and a couple of us were able to attend the drinking and drawing event over at McKinnon's Pub, which I had no idea what to expect going into it, but it was actually a lot of fun, and it did help me figure out a piece that I'm working on, so I found it very worthwhile. And I was also able to talk to some other artists who were also attending and try and get an idea of how to possibly go about that piece. Drawing in a bar is tricky, though, considering it is pub lighting, and my eyesight is not exactly fantastic to begin with.
You walk back home and realize that every color is off by like 20% of the hue that you're intending.
The artist next to me actually brought a little book light specifically for that purpose.
Smart.
But I was just still in the sketching and drafting phase, so thankfully colors were not an issue for me.
And besides the fact that everything was closed, and we'll get to that later, Hartford, it was nice to see, did not turn into a massive shithole. We actually wandered about, even towards the middle of the night, and I never felt like I was going to get stabbed in the neck.
That was a couple blocks farther down.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a radius, a safe radius that I would stay within.
Yeah, we were in the least stabby portion of Hartford.
Nice.
If you wanted to go to the stabby portion, you should have said.
I've been to the stabby part of like West Hartford and downtown Bad Hartford.
Not
like take a left instead of a right off of the highway, Hartford.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, Hartford is the only city that I have ever seen that had like a true wrong side of the tracks. But I digress.
Mm.
Quick aside. My friend wanted Taco Bell while we were in college, and he wanted it really bad, but it was 2 in the morning. So he's like, I'm going to get Taco Bell. So we plugged into a GPS or whatever, Taco Bell, and he went wherever the GPS took him. Well, it went to the bad part of Hartford, and the very bad part, and we had a car following us that was flashing his lights at us. And my friend, in his infinite wisdom, decided to pull over and roll down his window.
As you do.
And
what could go wrong?
The person that was in the vehicle behind us pulled up next to us in a hoodie and obviously holding. And he asked if we wanted to buy some rock. And we were like, no, thank you. We're good. And then he drove away, thankfully. And we went back home. Sans Taco Bell.
Aww.
But the part we were at was really nice. I mean, I don't know about really nice, but it was fine. And we went to a cigar shop and hung out there, and that was good times. Just all milling about.
Yeah, we had our fun times with the crew.
Back to convention-y stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I really enjoyed was talking to all of the artists directly. Something that I'm going to mute myself because there's a siren going by, so someone fill in the gap.
Yeah, it was kind of nice being able to talk to some of the various artists in the artist alley, because we'll go into this in other bullet points, but we had time and so did they. So we had chances to chat, to some degree talk shop, and to some degree just hear some of their stories and get a better idea of what they're doing there and how they go about their convention years.
And boy, do they like talking. And I don't say that as a dig. It was actually good, and it kind of spiraled in some ideas of, what is Inspire the Muse and what is it going to become, and how can we capitalize on the network that we have now, and how can we bring that to the forefront? Something that's not talked about a lot. Us being focused on writing for the most part has sort of limited us in our ability to share things with everybody. And with the new direction that we're going and opening those floodgates up will be really nice. And I'm looking forward to contacting the artists and see if we can get them on the podcast.
Yeah, that would be very nice.
And talking to the artists is in the inspiration section, so I bought a piece of art that inspired a talkie point that we will get to in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I think yours is in 2 weeks from now, so episode 112.
So look forward to that, and I will show the artwork on the podcast. So for you listeners, make sure to tune in to the video. It was nice, speaking of walking around talking to artists, just overall it was nice realizing that we don't really need a booth for 90% of what we do at conventions. And we can kind of cherry pick conventions that we think the booth or the profit per booth cost ratio is at least reasonable. I don't expect it to be positive anytime soon, but for things like the Hartford Comic Con, where the sellables were few and far between, and if it wasn't for those ninja cubes, we would have been looking pretty bad. It's nice to know that there's a lot of stuff that we can do at a convention that we almost never get to do because we're too busy doing booth duty. And we could cover a lot more ground talking to people directly instead of just milling about scared. And, a lot of times I was just standing idly by near the booth in case somebody needed a run, like go, get coffee or run back to the hotel and get something. I didn't do a ton of wandering, and I certainly didn't do any alone. I was mostly, hiding behind CJ the entire time. But what was nice is that I think I opened up a little bit and realized that we're all just humans, and that everyone's willing to talk. That's what they're there for. They're there to talk about their goods, and they're all excited about it. And they're all very appreciative when you compliment them. So I'm glad that this convention opened me up a little bit more, and so hopefully next year will be well taken advantage of.
I got distracted by a message, but I agree.
Yeah, it was nice getting to talk to new artists. I think for me, what spurred on chatting with some of them was recording that the first panel of the convention, and it's a real bummer that no one showed up for the first two panels. Like that was kind of crazy for me, but kind of worked out in my favor because I met a bunch of really cool people, and I got a lot out of just those simple interactions, and that opened up me walking around and talking with more artists and more people. It also helped that there was a crap ton of people that I already knew that happened to be there that weekend.
There were a lot of old friends there.
I feel like 80% of our contacts were there this weekend in one form or another. So it was oddly comforting, at least for me anyway. And that kind of made the convention all the better for me. Is seeing so many familiar faces.
Yeah, I know for myself it was really nice being able to talk to Wayward Raven again, even though you talked to them even more than I did. And I also recognized Monster Haiku from it was one of the dozen or so Connecticut conventions, because they all sound alike with their names. But I forget exactly which one, but I had a couple of his books, and I remembered that, and we managed to talk for a few minutes, which was nice. I was completely unable to find or track down Leo from Kineticon. I think Calvin's the only one that actually saw him.
Yeah, I kind of ran into him walking around. I think it was Saturday. Yeah, bumped into him, said hello, chatted for a few minutes. It's always cool seeing him and his whole crew working on their show, their series, Con Men. That's a pretty interesting series. So, I approve.
And of course, our other friends, E.A. Rappaport was there, Jim Taylor, Aaron Wood. Unfortunately, Rusty wasn't able to be there, which is a shame. And hopefully he's feeling better now. I haven't looked for any latest updates on that. Let's see. And this was the last convention of the year for us, but we were able to talk to the people coordinating the first convention of next year that we'll be at. Fine people at EuroMiniCon, which is always fun. And it kind of keeps the mindset flowing of this season may be over, but the other season is already organized and set. So while we kind of have 3 months not quite off, we have 3 months to figure things out. And I'll let Calvin do the last one since he's the one who actually did that thing. Or Calvin and Will, really.
Calvin recorded it though, because he's the fancy tech guy.
Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Google Docs decided to reset on me. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I saw that in the icon in the top right.
Yeah. The Ernie Hudson Q&A panel. That one was actually a lot of fun. I enjoyed watching it, and I enjoyed recording it as well. Like, Ernie Hudson is just he's an actor. He's in a movie, like a cult hit movie, but he's just a regular dude. And that's what I really liked about him. He's just a regular dude that happens to act, make a living as an actor. And
paid.
I love his reasoning for like, the different roles he's taken on. His reasoning is basically, listen, I have 4 kids. I gotta make a living. But he had some really fun stories of making a living along the way. Various interactions he's had with actors and directors, particularly one director that he had less than stellar time working with.
That story was horrible but hilarious.
I guess keep an eye out for us posting that interview video at some point.
Yes, I will be posting that at some point, probably the beginning of next week.
Cool. I'm looking forward to seeing it myself. No spoilers.
No spoilers, but you will enjoy it. He also shared his thoughts on the upcoming Ghostbusters movie.
Is it in line with everyone else's thoughts?
It's like he seems pretty relatively enthusiastic about it, like from what I could tell. Well, enthusiastic enough that pseudo spoiler. He decided to, he went into New York City and recorded a scene for the movie. So there's actually going to be quite a few cameos from previous Ghostbusters actors in that movie. So that at least is something to look forward to.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because this is sort of a different universe. So it's not like an origin story. It's not a sequel. It's just sort of, and it's not really a reboot either. It's sort of a reimagining, and so these people are going to be playing different characters. They're not going to be playing themselves from the Ghostbusters franchise. So It's going to be interesting to see if they can bring some quirk into the movie and maybe do some fan servicey referencing.
I'm not sure about anybody else, but I'm feeling cautiously enthusiastic and optimistic about this movie. I like all the actresses that are playing that are going to be the main characters, and I think it's hilarious that Chris Hemsworth is going to be playing the quirky, dorky receptionist character for them. So that's going to be fun to watch, at the very least for that.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm hopeful. I'll still see it in theaters, but I'm hopeful that I'll actually enjoy it.
I don't go to the movies, but I would go to the movies to see this. I'm relatively excited for it.
I, on the other hand, are extremely nervous and apprehensive. They're going to have to sell me on it.
Understandable. Oh, we'll see if they can pull it off.
Yeah.
Mm.
But in the meantime, onwards to the next section of the convention review.
Boy, did I have a lot to say. I was looking at the bullets.
So the next section is creatively blocked. What negative aspects, events, interactions, or ideas came about during this convention? Who should go first?
I basically have from the second to last.
How about the one who has no opinions whatsoever? Justin, lead us off.
Okay, so I'll just kind of go through the whole list because I agree with the other two things that are on this list that I didn't write directly. So convention food, still very complicated. It's difficult when there's only really 2 food items offered, and everyone in our group has different dietary needs. You know, I'm trying to lose weight, so maybe I don't want to eat a slice of cheese pizza and a hot dog. You know, maybe I would have preferred a chicken Caesar salad or something. I wasn't expecting miracles. Hotel prices are still what they are, and unfortunately, we didn't really have a ton of time to go to the hotel restaurant. We were all fairly active, at least on the convention floor. You know, usually in previous conventions, I would go hide into my room, so I would have plenty of downtime, but not this one. So having food was important. And it was especially frustrating because there were only 2 booth badges, and they were very strict about bringing in outside food and liquids. And only if you had the badge could you get through unscathed without literally hiding food and drinks at the bottom of camera bags.
Which we would never do.
No, definitely not. I never saw any of that.
Neither did I.
But once we figured that out, we were able to borrow the booth badges to go on food runs and bring stuff back. It turned out that the booth badges didn't have any names on them, and no one really checked anything. It was all wristband stuff, which we'll get to. And which made things even more complicated is Hartford is apparently closed on Sunday.
Hartford is closed after 5. On weekdays, never mind weekends.
At least downtown Hartford, anyway. Which is very disconcerting. Like, honestly, our only saving grace this weekend was the fact that the Dunkin' Donuts across the street from the XL Center decided to be open on Sunday when they're usually not.
Right, they're open just for the convention.
Yeah.
They're usually not open on Sundays either.
So that was very much appreciated, and I'm sure they made a killing on Sunday.
It's a shame
was
the
pretty
deli
packed.
next to them didn't.
And they would have too. At least made back to hire a staff.
I would have gone there were they open. I was planning to go there.
Yes.
Because I thought they were open. Yeah. Food is complicated at conventions because I think the convention centers play a big part in what options are available or not. And
Why were there no options available?
That I don't know.
I would like crappy options would have been way better than the no crap options, and also the one option they had was crappy.
I would like to think that the XL Center has an expanded menu beyond what they offer there. Just in general, on the back end, they should be able to offer more. But I don't know what pricing structure they have to offer that up to events. It's entirely possible that the convention itself paid for that set menu and didn't expand it because of budgeting concerns, for all I know. I'm just tossing out ideas.
It's not like the food items were offered at discount price.
No.
Someone was making massive profit, and it wasn't any of us.
Hmm.
But yes, I can actually list off all the options on right here, right now. Cheese pizza, hot dog, pretzel, nachos. And you could argue there was a cotton candy vendor, so that was nice. And there was a beef jerky vendor, which was incredibly expensive but nice. And there was at one point barbecue vendor that was only there for like an hour and only on Saturday.
I saw them, but I saw them as they were packing up and we were getting ready to leave. They were there. I didn't see them on Sunday, only on Saturday.
So weird. Why?
Oh, the convention center cafeteria also had peanuts. You must get a lot because they were $5.
I think those peanuts were at the beef jerky place.
No, I definitely saw it on the menu over where they had the overpriced hot dogs and pizza too.
Oh. And they had movie theater candy. That was another weird thing that I wasn't sure why they would sell at a convention. But anyways.
Moving on.
Food is bad. Saturday was a clusterfuck. They learned from their mistake and fixed it on Sunday, which was really nice. But Saturday was bad. The way the XL Center basement is set up is that there's two super wide flights of stairs that go down into the central lobby area, and then escalators on each side of those two stairs. So there's like there's two sets of escalators and like two sets of stairs. Anyways, the door is basically right adjacent to the stairs, so there's no room to queue. And there were no like queue lines, and they were checking bags, every bag, which is fine. I don't mind that. They probably should have had more than one person checking bags. They moved it up to 2, and I think at 3 at one point at the very end, but that could have been streamlined a little bit better. But the big problem was that there's no queue, and so there are people walking down the stairs, and all they see is just a pile of people. And so depending on the flow, you could get stuck, and then there's a row of people walking in front of you, basically, trying to get to the back of the swarm. And then you're stuck there if you don't try to go with them, and you can try to push your way to the side. It was all just a big mess. And there were lines, like big piles of people like coming up the stairs, and depending on which stair you went down, you got a different experience entirely about the queuing system, and you probably got shortcutted in. So that was a huge problem, but they did fix it on Sunday. Another thing that was broken that they didn't fix on Sunday was an escalator. This is the second convention we've been to where the escalator was broken. And it wasn't like the last convention where I think it broke during the convention. I can't remember, but this one was broken as soon as we got there, like before the convention even started. Like, why? Why? Are we cursed with broken escalators? I was so frustrated and angry. And by the way, there was no sign saying, oh, how do you get downstairs? You had to go wandering about until you found an elevator, which is around a 180-degree corner. There is an elevator within sight of the escalator, but it's a service elevator, so it doesn't actually do anything. All they had to do is like put up a sign saying elevator this way. And I probably wouldn't have been screaming all the time. I saw a lot of people jump the gate and go down the broken escalators. I saw that more than once.
Which you explained to me in detail as to why you should not be doing that.
Right. Because the motor is providing torque to hold up all the weight, and if the motor's been shut off, then you're relying basically on what I assume is probably some sort of brake system, but it's probably not meant for like 20 people at a time. And you could easily slide the stairs down and get caught. I've seen enough live leak videos of people getting ripped apart in escalators. So the idea that somebody would jump down there is very confusing to me.
Yeah, tying into that conversation, the overall communications as to what was going on where and how were, I feel, minimal. Or at least not as clear as they could have been. And I only want to preface that by my perspective is after doing conventions in I don't even know how many states at this point across like 6 years. So I've kind of gotten an idea of who to ask what and where to go regardless of where they are. If you're just an attendee or this is one of your first conventions, I have a feeling it was probably frustrating, more so than for us.
The volunteers there, while extremely nice and very easy to talk to, they had just as much information as we had, which was none.
Yeah.
There were no maps. There were no programs. There was a map on the website, but they only had like labels of the vendors. So if you didn't know what the vendor name was, you didn't really know it was there because there's no big list, like a couple sentences. We'll get to why that's really important later. And it was just, I was walking around trying to figure out information about a specific booth, and I went to like 10 volunteers, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. That doesn't seem right. What? I wouldn't know. Why don't you go downstairs and somebody down there will know. Nope, no one knows anything.
And I would just want to add to that, all of the various volunteers that I talked to, they were very nice. They did the best they could with the information given.
Right, they were just as frustrated as we were.
I don't want to knock the volunteers.
This was not their fault. I want to make that clear as well. They were just as frustrated as we were.
But I know not everyone is as understanding and forgiving if they're faced with very little information. They're curious as to something or somewhere, what to do, and no one has answers.
Especially when you're looking for a very specific booth to try to keep people away from it. That was incredibly upsetting and completely unexpected. There was a booth there called something Reptile, and you think, oh, okay, maybe they sell like, art or trinkets. It could be a name of anything. It could be a comic book or a podcast.
Or faux crocodile leather or whatever.
Right, or like plushies. It was not. It was live animals, including but not limited to crocodiles, large snakes, and, of course, tarantulas. And they were all for sale. And people were walking around with them. And to tie this into the booth thing, when I'm trying to desperately find out where this booth is so that we can keep somebody away from it because they have an actual phobia of spiders, not like spiders are so creepy, they upset me. No, this was bad. And trying to find that place so that we can talk to them and make sure that they don't go anywhere near us was frustrating when no one knew anything and no one knew what people were there. To their credit, they were very nice once we found the booth and very understanding, and we had minimal fuss after that, although on Sunday there was a near miss, which could have been prevented if they had actually followed what they said on Saturday and waiting until the end of the day to pick up your items. And it's just unbelievable that this would even be a thing that would be at a comic convention. It doesn't make any sense. And if it does make sense, and I'm not getting it, you should probably have some information up.
Yeah, I don't even know how many conventions we've covered now. My badges are over there. I don't want to count right now. This is the first time that I've seen live animals of that sort at a convention, so I think it threw everyone for a loop. It's just never something that was even a thought of a possibility or something that we would need to keep track of. But yes, the people there were very nice, very understanding, and they were not so much the walking around issue. They stay in their booth. It's just the people who purchase them and walk around and want to show it off that are problematic.
I do, as nice as they were, I do want to call them out on the fact that they did ensure us they would tell people to pick them up at the end of the day, and they did no such thing on Sunday because there was a person walking around in the middle of the day with one.
I want to hope that it was a matter of that person said, "Oh, I don't know how long I'm going to be, so I'll just grab it now and I'm heading out." And then he started to wander regardless. But I don't know. That's part of the scenario. We just don't have specific information to prove one way or the other.
Right.
But that said, if there are comparatively unusual vendors, I feel like that's something that you would like to communicate on your website or to other vendors, because that's one of the few, or the only scenario so far I've seen where you could have a legitimate issue because this vendor is vending stuff that could trigger people. It's not a matter of artwork being controversial or there's content out there that makes people squick and cringe and really uncomfortable. This is literally triggering.
Right. It's what is unfortunate about the word triggering, that triggering has gotten a bad name because there are legitimate triggers, and this is one of them. And we'll get more into that on another podcast, obviously.
Yeah.
But it'd be like having a booth that was selling hardcore pornography. Does it do any direct, literal, physical harm to the people walking near it or people walking about with it?
Which, to be fair, has been a thing at conventions and occasionally an issue because it's supposed to be covered or behind the table if at conventions that are all ages. And
Right.
some vendors don't always do that, and then there's complications. Some conventions handle that better than others.
Yes. So it's the exact same thing. It should be covered. It should be in a specific place where people who want to view the material can go freely in. I'm not saying that it needs to be covered and people aren't allowed to look at it because that would kind of defeat the purpose.
This is where having a booklet or pamphlet of vendors with even a 1 to 2 sentence description of what they have available would be appreciated.
Right, and just like if you buy some sort of, rated R or rated X artwork from a vendor or an artist, they could theoretically put it in a black sleeve, and then when you're walking around, it's not,
blatantly visible to minors.
And they could have done that to those spiders. They could have thrown a black, sheet around it.
Well,
and said, hey, look.
For the one that was out of its cage and on the woman's face, that might be a little tricky.
Was that at least in the booth?
It was at the booth.
Okay.
One of the handlers had it on her face to show that it was not a threat.
And that's fine as long as it's in that booth and that booth's location is well understood by everyone.
Which it became.
Right.
Moving on.
We were talking a little bit about the floor arrangement. One thing I didn't really care for were the four-way intersections. There's some benefit in that you can switch lines very quickly, but it kind of breaks the natural flow of traffic and you can kind of get stuck. So that was unfortunate. Let's see.
To basically try and help it for our audio listeners, not that we have a visual up, there were booths all along the edge of the room, and then there were various aisles that you could walk up and down, but halfway down the aisle there was a row that you could walk back and forth horizontally, which did break things up a bit. And I feel like some of those corner booths got kind of stuck because not everyone was necessarily going to swap lanes and see what was on the corners, at least in the middle. I know there were a couple that I missed a couple times around until I just wandered a bit more.
And besides the sellables and the artists, There really wasn't a whole lot to do there. It was basically like an art fair.
There was the panels room, which was constant. Both days they had panels back to back to back with 15-minute transitions in between. And the gaming room, which I personally did not get a chance to look at, so I'm not quite sure what sort of setup they had over there.
I
The game,
know. Oh, go ahead, Gavin.
the game room had a bunch of like a whole bunch of scattered little TV stations that had PS4s, Xbox Ones. They had really
Yeah.
cover for me. Hold on one second.
Yep. But
I know. I think it was Saturday morning. Ed and I walked past before opening because we like to look around before the official opening to see what else was there. And we stopped by the GameStop booth, and they did say that they were having tournaments all throughout the weekend for different games, Smash Brothers, Mortal Kombat, stuff like that, Mario Kart. So I'm sure there was, and they did say after the tournaments there was kind of free play stuff too.
that's cool.
So they did have stuff going on there all weekend.
But it wasn't really well advertised. Like there was there might have been information on the website, but God knows I wasn't able to find it. And there was no signs anywhere until you got to the literal game room, and then there's a sign that said game room.
Mm-hmm.
And when I took a peek in there, it looked like there were like 3 devices in there. I wasn't even sure if it was being used properly. That might have been the tabletop gaming room, and I wasn't sure. But this was just there. I've been to so many cons where there's just a ton of stuff to do, and the cosplay repair centers, and different rooms, and this room is just come in and play board games and card games, and these conventions are what people come to do, and they're kind of in the forefront. And the artist alley and stuff like that, and the vendors, which doesn't really help us that much, but that's usually the second tier of things that are promoted, which I think is probably better because the idea that, there's so much stuff to do, come on and have fun, brings the people in, and then they can wander out to the vendors and the sellables and get their little gift shop trinkets at the end. But the artists and the gift trinket area itself should not be the sole bringer of people, because you're only going to get the people that are there. I want to buy an art print, and then not look at anything else. You're going to get those people. You're going to get those people that are there to, get their celebrity signature and then immediately leave. Those are the people you're going to get. The people who are there to buy a big ticket item that has their favorite anime on it and then leave. Instead, you should have in the forefront all the things there are to do so you can attract more people of variety and have them go to all of the other booths and, just kind of talk and mingle. And I found the whole arrangement very disappointing, where it was basically a giant room filled with artists and sellables and then not a whole lot else. I mean, there was a mechanical bolt. I don't know why that was there. And I never saw it being used once. I heard one person use it, and he fell off and broke something on his face, and that was the only thing I heard.
I think one thing that might have thrown us collectively for a loop is this was probably one of the first true comic cons that we've been at, where the primary focus and spin was comics. A lot of the conventions that we go to are now multi-genre. Kineticon, Inconceivable, your Minicon. A lot of the ones we do, comics is not necessarily the main thing, or anime, or gaming. They kind of cover all of it. So you get a wider spread of offerings. You get a greater diversity in the vendor room. You get a greater diversity in the panels and events. You get a greater diversity in the special guests that they get, because they're covering multiple aspects of the industry. Comic-Cons, I feel like, still focus primarily on comics, as we saw plenty of comic book vendors.
And on top of that, you're going to get the people who are there for the comics and the comic paraphernalia and stuff like that.
Mm.
And then if you have a panel that's not directly celebrity related or directly here are all the voices from your favorite, anime in a panel, people are not going to go to it because they're there to get their comic on, and then I can't believe I just said that, and leave. They're not interested in anything else. I'm sure some of them are, but the lion's share of the people that were there were in it for what they were in it for, and they weren't out exploring.
And to be fair, that's fine. As long as they had fun, then as long as people have fun at the event has effectively succeeded. That said, there's more to the event than just the people just the attendees. It would be nice to also let the artists have fun, and the panelists have fun, and the guests have fun. And I can't really speak for any of the others, but at least, well, technically I was an attendee because I just had the attendee wristband. But I had fun here and there.
I just think that this convention was probably just not our convention.
I think we've gotten so used to the multi-genre ones that that's kind of the mindset we've gotten into. So to do one that was so differently focused, we just don't really align with that.
Especially as a booth.
Yes. Which, it's a shame, but it's not really...
reality.
Yeah, it's not really a knock on Hartford Comic Con or a knock on what we are. It's just... it is reality. The two of us don't really align. Which kind of helps us roll into the last third of this review of lessons learned. And there are a few of those. The first one was, we should review the artist and vendor list in the future to get a better idea of what friends are attending. Are there any booths of interest that we may want to check out? And are there potential booths to avoid? Because for the most part, even the weirdest of conventions that we've done, they still list artists and, to a degree, vendors. So we're still able to at least check the list of who's attending in that respect so we can get an idea. Because it does help. And it also helps us figure out, okay, I want to be talking to these few people because we may be able to do an interview, or, hey, we've seen these people before, let's catch up. Stuff like that. Because I do not remember seeing Wayward Raven on the map, so I was very surprised to see them there. But it was a happy surprise.
Another thing is that it turns out we can host 6 people in some of the bigger hotel rooms with little fuss. We've been to a lot of cons recently where it was a very tight fit for 4 or 5 people, to the point where there was one where I had to go with my wife, and so I ended up getting a second room because there's no way we would be able to fit the 2 of us in there with everyone else. But this larger hotel room could house a lot more people and had a lot more space. So that's something to keep in mind in the future in seeing what our hotel options are and seeing how much space is in the hotel and what we can bring.
I think, to be fair, we were also very space conscious this convention.
Yeah, we didn't have stuff strewn about like we usually do. And I'm not picking on anyone specifically. I think that's just how it is sometimes. I know I purposely packed extremely light. I didn't even bring my computer. I basically fit everything into a backpack. And speaking of people, we need to really make sure that everyone is properly hydrated, properly fed, and properly rested.
We are very bad about that.
Hydrated is very important. We all got dehydrated at one point. Properly fed is important. Thank God Ed brought pasta salad.
Which was delicious.
If it wasn't for that pasta salad, we might not have made it through the convention alive.
Mm.
And I don't say that really in jest. I think we might have all gotten really, really sick. if we hadn't had that real food there.
Because I would have burned through all of my budget just having pizza and hot dogs, and I would have regretted it.
Right, and even when you're like at the booth, so here's kind of how I see things as Reality Man, and I'm gonna say this is mostly my experience, so I'm not gonna put this on anyone else, but people can chime in if they agree. I feel like when we're at the booth, there's like 3 options of food. There's what's already in the booth, which is very convenient, and some of us don't like to leave the booth because it's our space and we're comfortable there, and so we'll eat what's at the booth. Then there's go back to the hotel room and get food, which is kind of a to-do because there's more people than there are hotel room cards most often. And when somebody runs away to a hotel room, it's kind of difficult because then you can't really call on them very easily if you need a run. And then there's going outside and getting food. And at some of the smaller conventions, when they're not in a big city, that's not so bad. You can drive like 10 minutes down the street and end up in a normal shopping plaza area that has a bunch of restaurants and grocery stores. When you're in the middle of Hartford, there's not like a Stop and Shop down the road. You have to get off, get back on the highway, and it's just such a to-do that we ended up I think all of us ended up just kind of dealing with whatever we managed to sneak into the booth at various times.
Or eat at the hotel room.
Right, or eat at the hotel room. And while we bring lots of snacks and we bring a variety and we try to do pretty good on that kind of thing, you get sick of packages of crackers and granola bars. And when you're there for 2, 3, we were there 4 days, not at Hartford, but we've been to conventions for multiple days. That gets really old, and that's not good for you. We can't do that anymore.
And I think we're all getting to the point in our lives where doing like little ramen bowls for a meal is not the best idea.
And that's okay for like the one meal, like, oh, I'm hungry and it's 4 p.m. and no one's ready for dinner yet. I'll just have a ramen bowl and tide myself over. But not 3 meals a day.
Or not as the primary meal.
Right. That's insanity. And I think hydration is right up there with something that we're all very bad at.
I will admit I am horrible with that in regards to conventions because at work I have a Nalgene water bottle that I fill up in the morning every day, and I make a point of trying to finish that by the end of the day, if not earlier.
And we bring a case of mini waters, which is really good for traveling, but I don't think it's really enough to sustain us. Next time I'm just going to bring like 3 gallons of spring water from Stop and Shop that are like 99 cents each, and we're just going to have to drink out of cups. The booth bottles of water and the Powerades are very nice, and I'm glad we have them.
They're good in a pinch.
Yes, and they're good at the booth when you can't really get up. But for hotel room sustainability, it needs to be there. And the third thing I'll say, and this is really, maybe this is old man Justin, but proper rest is way more important now. At least for me. I can't do the stay up until 2 in the morning and then wake up at 6 for booth duty. And I don't know about when I observe some of the other members of the group, it doesn't look like they can either. I'm not going to point anyone out specifically, but I feel like we need to set a curfew and a bedtime for us if we're going to get up in the morning. When it comes to when we're just attendees and we're not doing booth duty, and we're just there to, chill for the weekend,
or
then fine.
Just press, or maybe we have a panel or 2.
Right. Then
we don't have to be on the whole time.
Then we can stay up until 1 in the morning and then wake up at 10 a.m. for some brunch at the hotel room. But when we're doing booth duty, I don't think we can sustain staying up that late. And there's a couple times where we've tried to stay up late and we all failed and all fell asleep anyways, especially when we have the 3-day cons. We'll stay up late on Friday, and then when Saturday night rolls around, we're all basically exhausted already. And so I just feel like we need water, food, and sleep, and I'm very bad about that, and I think we could be better as a group about trying to maintain those 3 levels of Sims attribute bars.
Basically, we're all getting old.
Yeah.
We can't do the college lifestyle for conventions. It doesn't work.
And I hilariously already knew that about myself. Because I remember the first convention, I was like, what are you people doing? You're watching YouTube videos until like 2 in the morning, and I had like I tried to take as much melatonin as possible and go hide under their covers while the lights were on so that I could get some sleep. And I'm just like, this can't be sustained, and I think everyone else is starting to catch up with me now.
Kind of tying into that somewhat. If we're doing a full crew attendance at a convention, so all 5 of us, we need more than just the booth to keep us busy. Or something other than the booth to keep us busy to justify all 5 of us being there. Because we naturally gravitate towards the booth. That is basically our headquarters for the weekend. But booths only hold 2 people. Period. Non-negotiable. So if there's 5 of us, the math doesn't really add up.
And I've been actually thinking about a couple solutions to this, and I won't go into too much detail now, but one of the things that I was thinking about is we can have somebody basically, in the hotel room in charge of media distribution. So, Calvin comes in with his interview that he just did at a panel, and then he goes back out, he drops off the files and goes back to the next thing. And then whoever's up there immediately starts editing it in the hotel room and starts sending it out. I think sending out that content even earlier than we already do, and I think we do a damn good job right now, but being able to put that stuff out day of, that's stuff that a lot of people do when they go out to conventions. You see people going to PAX and other gaming conventions and media people, even smaller podcasts and video casts. They have that shit out day of or next day. And I think we could do that if we weren't all just milling about. And proper, time slots might be helpful, or scheduling. We kind of play it by ear a little bit.
I think we may have to be more strict on that in the future.
And there's a lot of very comfortable in the booth, but you really need to leave so that you can get up, walk around, eat, not be stressed.
But
there's
I don't
something
wanna.
You have to. And you have to eat. Eating is important. Blood sugar is important. A lot of us can attest to that.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that's becoming more of an issue for myself as well.
I've had
becoming pretty apparent.
Yeah, I've had questionable blood sugar problems since I was a teenager. It's God knows if I got a blood test, I probably would come back positive for diabetes. Who knows? But we need to eat, and we need to eat in a distributed manner, and we need to get our electrolytes back, and we need to eat real food, not just carb loading. That's why I try to bring beef jerky whenever I come, so we can have some sort of protein that doesn't need to be refrigerated. Maybe I need to bring a lot more so everyone else can have more.
These are logistics that we're going to be figuring out over the next 3 months before your mini-con.
Yes.
Yeah, because we need a definite definite food game plan, especially given the various dietary needs / restrictions that kind of fly out the window during convention time. I know for me, it's very, very difficult if I don't prepare beforehand to get the kind of nutrition that I require, due to the fact that I have to monitor carbs so voraciously. But it's unfortunately convention time. I think the only time that I've really eaten anywhere near normal for me was ConnectiCon. And the only reason that is because one of the food options was chicken Caesar salad, and I had 5 of them that weekend. So
every convention should have grilled chicken Caesar salad.
Agreed.
I would even eat that all the time, especially over a fucking slice of pizza for $6.
5.
Oh, well, at least it was only $5. I take it all back. Move it back up to the good pile then. What was the hot dog deal? It was like
Also $5.
wow, what?
Yeah,
What?
pizza and hot dogs were the exact same price, $5.
What? I, yeah. I think there was a deal that you could get like a hot dog and a bag of chips and then like a soda for $11. I was just like, are you fucking high?
I think it reminded me a lot of like baseball stadium food prices.
I think that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, given where it was, I think that's what it was, because the XL Center does a lot of like sports events, basketball and whatnot, as well as concerts
beer on
and shows.
Sunday.
They were. People were walking around with beer.
I missed that.
What?
So
I saw that.
I think they were just doing their standard fare, like what you would get if you went to a baseball game or a hockey match or something.
Huh. Quirky.
Dumb.
Before we get too derailed on that, moving on, tying into the whole full crew attendance, badge logistics are complicated for us because sometimes we're vendors, sometimes we're press, sometimes we're panelists, sometimes we're just attendees because we try to find something for all of us so that we can all attend. There's got to be a way to streamline this on all ends so that we can have a better idea of who always gets which badge if they're attending, or a choice of badges like vendor or panelist or press or this. Having just 2 options per person would probably help. That way, when we deal with conventions who are not familiar with us, I don't have to send over 12 emails to no avail to figure out how are we making this work, because this is the crew that I'm coming with and this is what we normally do. What can we do to make this work? And then it doesn't work. So I think trying to figure out a better game plan for that might help in the future. Thankfully, with some of the smaller conventions, we're more familiar with the people who organize them. So we're better able to explain our situation and figure out a way to balance it out. Like, if we come as press for 1 or 2 people, we'll be able to record X amount of content, or what if we do a couple panels for you to balance things out for a badge, stuff like that, so we can make it work. Something we're working on for the future. And the last one, which probably fit in earlier, mini fridges come in handy and really would be ideal for every weekend-long event that we're at, because that did kind of save us. And I wish more hotels had mini fridges available. Were there any other comments from any aspect in regards to Hartford Comic Con that people would like to toss in? I'm going to go with no.
I've pretty much said my piece about it. And we've basically gone over everything that we could about it.
Now for the very complicated and dangerous question. For each of you, would you do Hartford Comic Con again after what we've experienced? Like, say, Hartford Comic Con 2016. Would you attend or not?
I would definitely consider attending, especially to talk to the artists. I think that's extremely valuable and will be even more valuable for us in the future. I would not get a booth. I may consider getting press if we saw a list of panels and a list of guests that we were interested in. But if we weren't, maybe leave the video stuff at home and just take a camera and take a bunch of pictures of cosplay. I think attendees and press we could probably go to. I would definitely not get a booth, and I would maybe even consider not spending the night at a hotel there. I would consider going up for an all-day Saturday thing or rolling back. Obviously, this is more difficult for Calvin, so we'd need to hold him up at like my place or something during that weekend because he's all the way from New York. But I think that'd be manageable. I was only an hour away, so I could easily just go back home after 5 and be done with it. If we didn't have to do booth pickup and stuff like that, we could come and go when we please. I don't see a reason to necessarily take a hotel room, and if we do, probably only need it for the one night. So I would definitely consider going. I don't know what the actual attendee prices were. Were they like $70 or something?
21 for the day pre-ordered. I think it was 25 and 27, or like 27 Saturday, 25 Sunday on site, something like that.
Okay, I think that's reasonable, and I would consider going, but definitely not have a booth there.
Yeah, I would probably try as press if possible, and then probably do the same as you. I'd go up Saturday, take photos, because depending on the options for video stuff, it would be complicated to bring all that, and then go back home, which admittedly is an hour and a half away, but still comparatively feasible. And it's someone else's turn because the phone is ringing.
I'd go for like I'd definitely like if I was just going as an attendee, I would like just a day pass, go Saturday or something, or Sunday in a panel or something. I was like, oh, that sounds fun. Or if we were running a panel, obviously, and I needed to run it. We talked about. I don't know if our panels be accepted there, given the small number of panels that they had. Which I understand because they have one panel room and they were just doing them pretty much back to back. They couldn't have a lot of panels. That's understandable. But I wouldn't go as a booth again though. I think.
Unfortunately, I think we collectively caught about a quarter of that. You became very choppy.
Well, living in everyone the same when you're. But it is what it is. Basically, yes, I would go again as an attendee, not as a booth.
Okay.
Maybe if we had a panel, go as panelists, but I don't know if we'd get in.
For something like that, if we were debuting maybe the visual novel, we might be able to pull that off, or the RPG, something like that, but most of the other endeavors that we have in the works probably wouldn't really align with what Kineticon is at the moment.
Yeah. But definitely go as press or attendee, but not as booth again.
How about the Calvin?
I'm in agreement with everybody. All things considered, walking around as press, I had a good time, especially with the random encounters that I had. One particular one that stuck out was stumbling upon B.J. Britt of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hanging out with the New England Brethren of Pirates. That was was a blast watching them all have fun and get rowdy. So that was really cool. So, I enjoyed having random moments like that, and even better, being able to capture that in pictures, which you can check out on our Facebook page and our website. Plug. But as press, I enjoyed myself. I really don't do terribly well at the booth in general, so it's probably good that I stay busy and stay moving around. So, with that being said, I would go again as press or even as an attendee. As an attendee for a day, it was definitely there are things there that make it worth your while.
Yeah, I think general consensus is it is a good convention. There's fun to be had as an attendee, and there's opportunities to attend as press. But in regards to us specifically being a vendor, it's just not really in alignment with who we are and what we're offering up. But if you are more of a regular artist or comic book or graphic novel artist or vendor of that style, it is probably more your thing. I'm still glad that we were able to go, and we made the most of it, as we do. So we'll just have to see what next year has in store for us and how we'll make that work or not. We shall see. And for any viewers or listeners out there that were also attending or vendoring at Hartford Comic Con, by all means, post in the comments what you thought of the convention, how it went for you, the good, the bad, the ugly, or the inspired, creatively blocked, and lessons learned. And with that, we are going to try and power through the rest of our podcast as we started running a little long. The next segment up is our highlights reel. And we do have a few things to highlight this week before they get old. The first one up is there's an RPG out there which I am intrigued by and I kind of want to play called Undertale. Now, it's kind of like Earthbound. It's kind of quirky and unusual, but one of the main mechanics of the game is that you can talk yourself out of almost every single battle. So there are multiple ways to actually get to the end game. You don't have to just keep on going through every single enemy, every single boss. There are options, which is nice. And if you...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're viewing the article, there are spoilers in there, just so you know.
I think the Stick of Truth, the South Park PC game, also had occasions where you could avoid a fight through conversation. It wasn't always, because you eventually have to level up your character somehow. But there were a lot of fights that you could literally avoid by being on the right side of the fight or just talking your way out of it. And I thought that was really cool.
And from the images, it's a pretty simplistic game, at least artistically and style-wise, so it's not going to get too complicated or crazy. But it's nice to see that there are games being made out there where they do give you options, even in the simple ones. And apparently the story is actually pretty engaging, and the person who played this and wrote the article was not overly pleased with how it ended and why it ended the way it did. They had emotional opinions on it because I don't think they were expecting how that played out. Not in a frustrating way or anything, just I think they got more than they expected. Next piece up, yet another book is going to be transferred or formatted into television. In this case, Clive Barker's Weave World is apparently going to become a CW show. I haven't had a chance to read this particular book from Clive Barker, but considering Clive Barker's other works, I'm kind of surprised it's on the CW. I don't know. I'm curious about it because I do like Clive Barker's works, but we'll see how this one plays out. I'm hopeful because it would be nice to see some more Clive Barker stuff out there that's very well done. But we shall see.
This reminds me also that a new Stephen King's The Mist is coming out with a miniseries
Oh yeah.
and an actual discrete miniseries, not a TV show of 2 seasons like The Dome was, which was not very well received, especially the second season.
Hmm.
The Stephen King makes for good miniseries. I mean, between The Stand and trying to remember others.
I want to say it wasn't Rose Red. No.
Rosemary's Baby?
No.
No, not that
It was
one.
it was a mini series, but it was about a haunted house that kind of kept on growing after a while because weird shenanigans with the builder, and people try to go in there and figure out why it's kind of psychically linked to various things. That's going to bother me for a while until I figure it out.
It wasn't Storm of the Century or Needful Things. One of those I thought was a miniseries. It might have been a movie. But anyways, yeah. So The Mist is coming out, so that's also intriguing because that movie was good, and the ending was better than the book ending. And there's a lot of stuff that they could do with the Mist series or miniseries where they don't necessarily have to rehash the book. They could have it as a point of view from another group of people. And if it takes off, they could do another sequel miniseries pretty easily. So I'll be interested to see, as long as the special effects hold up, they have to be at least as good as or better than what the movie was, or it's going to be awful.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Next up is kind of a quirky list of 6 books that unleash real-life superpowers. I just thought it was an interesting list since it's not really one you normally see, but the 6 books basically boil down to like how to tell when someone is lying, how to understand body language and kind of take that to your advantage, and how to become a speed reader, which I actually wouldn't mind. That would be a very useful superpower considering my to-be-read pile. The ability to empathize. That actually is kind of a superpower nowadays considering how rare it is for the general populace. And then...
It's a blessing and a curse, be careful.
True. There's the memory book, which I could probably use as well, considering my memory is Swiss cheese at this point. And then Secrets of Mental Math, basically how to do very quick calculations and simplify mathematical equations and stuff in your head. Which probably wouldn't hurt on my end, but I'm not as interested in because math is not really my thing. But
it's kind of my thing.
Yeah. So this one's all yours.
Great.
But
my arithmetic ability is pretty bad.
It is an interesting list of more realistic superpowers for the real world, and stuff that actually would be kind of useful to have. And it's been a couple weeks, which means more book bundles. They've set out new ones. In regards to Story Bundle, they've put a collection of Philip K. Dick Award winners into a bundle, which is an interesting grouping to put together. This one has 6 books in the regular tier, so pay $1 and up, you get the first tier, and then if you pay, I'm going to guess this one's probably 12, because sometimes they're different. Nope. If you pay 15 or more, you get the second tier, which has 5. The first tier for this bundle are Estival Tide by Elizabeth Hand, Life by Gwyneth Jones, The Cipher by Kathy Koja, Points of Departure by Pat Murphy, Dark Seeker by K.W. Jeter, and Summer of Love by Lisa Mason. If you go for the second tier, for 15 and up, you get Frontera by Lewis Shiner, Acts of Conscience by William Barton, Maximum Ice by Kay Kenyon, Night Moves by Walter John Williams, and Reclamation by Sarah Zettel. And this is a brand new bundle over on Story Bundle, so you have 22 days and change to take a look at this one. And Humble Bundle just released a new one today as well. They're doing another comics bundle of forbidden comics in support of Banned Book Week. Similar deal, the first tier is $1 and up, and then their average tier is rotating depending on the average price at the moment of how much people paid. Gets you the second tier, and then the third tier in this case is for 15 and more, or 15 and up. If you were to do just the top tier, or the first tier, so $1 and up, you would get Maggie the Mechanic, Love and Rockets by Jamie Hernandez. You get The Frank Book by Jim Woodring. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 3 by Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill, which apparently is actually banned, not just challenged. Intriguing. CBLDF presents Liberty. Robert Kirkman, Jim Lee, Ed Brubaker, Frank Miller, Mike Mignola, and more. You'd also get Madame Paul Affair by Julie Dowsett, and Bone Volume 1 by Jeff Smith, which is apparently also banned. Never really thought of Bone as a bannable worthy book. Interesting. If you did the second tier, which is the gyrating average, currently at $11.87, you would get The Little Man by Chester Brown, The Boys, Hero-gasm, Garth Ennis, John McCrea, and Derek Robertson, Heartbreak Soup, Love and Rockets by Gilbert Hernandez, Barefoot Gen Volume 1, A Cartoon Story of Hiroshima by Keiji Nakazawa, Side Scrollers by Matthew Lowe, I can't pronounce French last names, Essex County by Jeff Lemire, and ElfQuest, The Final Quest, Volume 1 by Wendy Peeney and Richard Peeney. If you went all out and did Tier 3 for 15 and up, you would also get Not Funny, Haha, by Leah Hayes, Witches, Volume 1 by Scott Snyder and Jacques, and Information Doesn't Want to Be Free, which looks to be an audio download by Cory Doctorow, Neil Gaiman, Amanda Palmer, and read by Will Wheaton. That is a pretty packed bundle, and very impressive considering the amount that they put in there. And our last highlight for this week is previously mentioned Hartford Comic Con photo gallery, which is up on our website and also on our Facebook page. And I believe the Facebook page counted 157 or so photos because Calvin was busy.
I see stuff that I like, I take a picture, I repeat as necessary.
And Calvin happens to like a lot of stuff.
Yes, I do.
Which is why he got the press badge. And all the links to the stuff that we've discussed in this segment are in the show notes for episode 110 of Word Ninjas Live over on fcwriters.com under the Word Ninjas Live page. Or you can just go to our Facebook page and the gallery is up there as well. And with that, we migrate on to the Productivity and Inspiration Station. All of us survived Hartford Comic Con, so that's just kind of a general productivity one. But as for myself, I've also started figuring out potential visual identity evolutions for conventions in regards to booth logistics, but we have 3 whole months to figure that out. I've also managed to confirm 6 nano events for the year for our region, and I'm trying to figure out how to coordinate a few others because there's a few gaps on weekends. And Destiny's The Taken King expansion came out a little over a week ago now, but I've actually gotten back into that, and I'm very impressed with what they've added. After a year, there is finally a plot, and it makes me intrigued as to what the whole storyline is. So I'm actually having fun playing that in the free moments that I have. What has Will been up to since last Wednesday?
Not too much. Most of the usual stuff with getting audio edited and game breaks out. Woo, ahead of schedule. And mentally fortifying myself to get as much done in each day going forward as I possibly can, considering I now have 3 months before having to worry about a convention. I want to try and get as much done in each day as possible, more than I was doing before, all of the things. And I would be doing that now, except I also think I got con crud.
Boo.
And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one, but I definitely have it. And it's slowing me down, but not stopping me, just slowing. Just slowing. But I am going to work on, like I said, getting Roommate finished this year. And working on other projects and just getting more done, being more productive. There's always room for more productivity.
Yay, productivity. And I was actually able to find out that miniseries that I was blanking on. It apparently was called Rose Red, so I wasn't mistaken, which is surprising. But moving on, what has Justin been up to in the past week?
Speaking of greater productivity, I've been hella productive lately. First, a couple other things before I get to that. I was inspired by talking to the artists, as mentioned before, at the convention, and it kind of triggered a bunch of things that I wanted to do with our podcast and website and what I want to become. So that's exciting. I did some more Super Mario Maker. I got a level out just before convention. And apparently it's harder than I thought because it only has a completion rate of like 14%. But it got a couple stars and no comments yet, but still early. I plan to have a whole stage all set up and ready to go. So that's 4 levels, and when I get that set up, I'll pimp it on the podcast, and you'll see it in the show notes probably next week, because this weekend I have relatively free, and I just need to do a Bowser Castle level. And I've been having a lot of fun with that still. And in the productivity side of things, did I talk about my Academy of Excellence reboot last week at all?
I don't think so.
You did. You mentioned it.
Okay, but did I go into great detail about it? Because I don't want to rehash.
Not to that detail.
Yeah,
Okay.
not a lot of detail. You just mentioned that you were rehashing it.
Okay, so it's back in full force and actually working. I set up what I call an Academy of Excellence, which is basically you go about, you take a bunch of free online classes that don't really have a schedule, you decide some things that you want to learn, and you set up an actual course load and have deadlines for different sections. So I have it all set up in Asana with tasks assigned to me with deadlines for basically everything. So, for example, Mandarin I'm back into because they finally fixed the Android app, so I'll be able to use that a lot more. And basically, I have a deadline where I can go through one lesson of one unit a month. I'm reading an FE exam book and a CFD book at work, and it's basically a chapter a month, and I'm already way ahead of schedule on that. Partially because the Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of the FE exam book was basically here's a list of constants and here's a list of conversion factors. So probably didn't need to take a whole month to read a list of numbers. But that's okay. Being ahead of schedule is fine. I've also got programming, which I'm way ahead on. I gave myself all the way until like late October to finish it, and I think I'm going to finish it before the end of the month at the rate I'm going. Some full stack web design stuff, which kind of comes after the programming stuff. It's sort of, I set it up as one big long curriculum, so I'm already ahead of the game on that because of that. And yeah, way ahead of schedule, so that's exciting. And I'm going to start adding other stuff in there, like regular to-do lists for things that I'm supposed to be doing at home, and things of that nature. So I constantly have reminders bugging me with deadlines. And seeing that I'm ahead of schedule and giving myself plenty of room to breathe was a really good move. Because if I set my schedule up too conservatively and I was just barely hitting deadlines or missing deadlines left and right, I would probably feel really bad and then quit altogether. So maybe I'll talk more about the Academy of Excellence and self-learning as another talking point in another couple weeks when I can report back on, am I still keeping with it? But so far it's been working out really well.
Cool.
And this weekend I'll be doing businessy stuff as well. So next week is going to be really productive also.
Nice. And what has Calvin been up to since last week?
Not a whole heck of a lot. Just the usual 800 things that I do in a given week, of like no particular notice for this week. Though I have been really thinking about like this planning for the future and how I want to go about things, basically starting next year or even sooner than that, because I'm getting to a point where I need different at this point.
We're different.
You're also too far away.
And I can sympathize with Calvin. For the last couple months, I've been thinking about my future endeavors and where I want to see myself in 2 or 3 years. And that's kind of what this Academy of Excellence is doing, is helping me achieve that. Some of the things that I'm learning are things that I want to actually adapt and use in my life, and kind of be my own entrepreneur and just kind of get out there. And what I do when I hit 10 years, I'm going to have a nice wide skill set, and I could basically do anything. And we'll see what the future holds. Nothing set in stone, but I've been putting a lot of thought into it, so I can definitely empathize with Calvin.
So yeah, just trying to plan out where I want to go in life, or at the very least, get out of the current situations that I'm in. Not that they're particularly bad, but I need to progress in quite a few things. So I'm just figuring out my game plan right now.
Well, we're all here if you ever need ideas to bounce off people.
All right, I appreciate that. Just taking it bit by bit right now.
The first step is figuring out what you want. And that's actually sometimes the hardest part.
That I actually have figured out. It's just the few basic things that I want to do within the next year or so.
Well, then you're already halfway there as far as I'm concerned.
I kind of remembered some of the things that I wanted to do after chatting with CJ on the way home. So.
Yeah, it gets a little dangerous when the two of us drive for extended periods of time. We come up with ideas.
I'm really surprised we didn't figure out world domination plans when we drove to a Kai-Con.
We figured out the Wahada Ninja. Does that count?
And that counts for a lot. I still need to see that happen in one way or another.
I still need that audio recording so I can write down the notes from it.
I didn't send that to you?
No.
Damn it.
Before we distract ourselves too much, I'm going to move us along because we're running long.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Yeah, that's actually pretty much the end of the show. That is our various segments for this week. Thank you all for joining us for yet another episode. If we have entertained you in any way, shape, or form over the last hour and a half and more, check out the YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't yet already. Watch some entertaining videos from the podcast to the Game Break series to convention shenanigans. Post some comments or thumbs up some of the videos that you like. If you want to interact with us via other social media, we're over on Twitter at FCWordNinja or Tumblr, fcwordninja.tumblr.com. And we're also on Facebook, facebook.com/fullcoveragewriters. If you're unable to attend any of the various conventions that we are vendoring at, check out our Etsy store, etsy.com/shop/fullcoveragewriters, where we have all of our various shiny baubles and a lot of digital offerings that are not easily available at conventions. I mean, we still promote them, but there are no physical products, they're digital. So the Etsy store is your best bet to check all of that out. And if you want to track me down specifically, your best bet is my personal Tumblr, which is fancypantswolf.tumblr.com. Where can people track down Will?
You can use me on my Tumblr page at darkhome.tumblr.com. It's spelled DARKHOM. And you can also support me on my Patreon page at patreon.com/darkhome.
And how about Justin?
Oop, I was on mute. And to think this podcast was supposed to be the short podcast. You can find me and all my things, as usual, at mechanicaljustin.com.
And rounding us out, where can people find Calvin when he's not playing with weird things?
Let's see, at this point, your best bet is to find me somewhere on Instagram or Tumblr, Instagram or Twitter. There we go. CCWII is my handle on Instagram and Twitter. And that's about it for now.
Fair enough. And with that, thank you all for joining us for episode 110 of Word Ninjas Live. Tune in next Wednesday, where we start getting into some very interesting topics, specifically what is controversial content versus squick-inducing, like makes you very uncomfortable, cringe, and really want to walk away, versus actual triggering content, and how artists in general can handle that type of stuff. But until then, have a good week, everyone. Go do something creative. Go have some fun. And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
After parties, any events outside of the XL Center, just within Hartford, and a couple of us were able to attend the drinking and drawing event over at McKinnon's Pub, which I had no idea what to expect going into it, but it was actually a lot of fun, and it did help me figure out a piece that I'm working on, so I found it very worthwhile. And I was also able to talk to some other artists who were also attending and try and get an idea of how to possibly go about that piece. Drawing in a bar is tricky, though, considering it is pub lighting, and my eyesight is not exactly fantastic to begin with.
You walk back home and realize that every color is off by like 20% of the hue that you were intending.
The artist next to me actually brought a little book light, specifically for that purpose.
Smart.
But I was just still in the sketching and drafting phase, so thankfully colors were not an issue for me.
And besides the fact that everything was closed, and we'll get to that later, Hartford, it was nice to see, did not turn into a massive shithole. We actually wandered about, even towards the middle of the night, and I never felt like I was going to get stabbed in the neck.
That was a couple blocks farther down.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a radius, a safe radius that I would stay within.
Yeah, we were in the least stabby portion of Hartford.
Nice.
If you wanted to go to the stabby portion, you should have said.
I've been to the stabby part of like West Hartford and downtown Bad Hartford.
Not
like, take a left instead of a right off of the highway, Hartford.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hartford is the only city that I have ever seen that had like a true wrong side of the tracks. But I digress.
Quick aside, my friend wanted Taco Bell while we were in college, and he wanted it really bad, but it was 2 in the morning. So he's like, I'm going to get Taco Bell. So we plugged into a GPS or whatever, Taco Bell, and he went wherever the GPS took him. Well, it went to the bad part of Hartford, and the very bad part. And we had a car following us that was flashing his lights at us. And my friend, in his infinite wisdom, decided to pull over and roll down his window.
As you do.
And
what could go wrong?
The person that was in the vehicle behind us pulled up next to us in a hoodie and obviously holding. And he asked if we wanted to buy some rock. And we were like, no, thank you. We're good. And then he drove away, thankfully, and we went back home. Sans Taco Bell.
Aww.
But the part we were at was really nice. I mean, I don't know about really nice, but it was fine. And we went to a cigar shop and hung out there, and that was good times. Just all milling about.
Yeah, we had our fun times with the crew.
Back to convention-y stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I really enjoyed was talking to all of the artists directly, something that I'm going to mute myself because there's a siren going by, so someone fill in the gap.
Yeah, it was kind of nice being able to talk to some of the various artists in the artist alley, because we'll go into this in other bullet points, but we had time and so did they. So we had chances to chat, to some degree talk shop, and to some degree just hear some of their stories and get a better idea of what they're doing there and how they go about their convention years.
And boy, do they like talking. And I don't say that as a dig. It was actually good, and it kind of spiraled in some ideas of, what is Inspire the Muse and what is it going to become, and how can we capitalize on the network that we have now, and how can we bring that to the forefront, something that's not talked about a lot. Us being focused on writing for the most part has sort of limited us in our ability to share things with everybody. And with the new direction that we're going and opening those floodgates up will be really nice. And I'm looking forward to contacting the artists and see if we can get them on the podcast.
Yeah, that would be very nice.
And talking to the artists is in the inspiration section, so I bought a piece of art that inspired a talkie point that we will get to in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I think yours is in 2 weeks from now, so episode 112.
So look forward to that, and I will show the artwork on the podcast. So for you listeners, make sure to tune in to the video. It was nice, speaking of walking around talking to artists, just overall it was nice realizing that we don't really need a booth for 90% of what we do at conventions. And we can kind of cherry pick conventions that we think the booth or the profit per booth cost ratio is at least reasonable. I don't expect it to be positive anytime soon, but for things like the Hartford Comic Con, where the sellables were few and far between, and if it wasn't for those ninja cubes, we would have been looking pretty bad. It's nice to know that there's a lot of stuff that we can do at a convention that we almost never get to do because we're too busy doing booth duty. And we could cover a lot more ground talking to people directly instead of just milling about scared. And, you know, a lot of times I was just standing idly by near the booth in case somebody needed a run, like go, you know, get coffee or run back to the hotel and get something. I didn't do a ton of wandering, and I certainly didn't do any alone. I was mostly, you know, hiding behind CJ the entire time. But what was nice is that I think I opened up a little bit and realized that we're all just humans and that everyone's willing to talk. That's what they're there for. They're there to talk about their goods, and they're all excited about it. And they're all very appreciative when you compliment them. So I'm glad that this convention opened me up a little bit more. And so hopefully next year will be well taken advantage of.
I got distracted by a message, but I agree.
Yeah, it was nice getting to talk to new artists. I think for me, what spurred.
Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to episode 110 of Word Ninjas Live. I'm your host, Charles, coming to you tonight with Will.
Hello.
Justin.
Hello, I'm here.
And Calvin.
Hello, everyone.
And we're coming to you tonight to talk about Hartford Comic Con, the last convention of our convention year and season. And as we do, we like to do a full review of the conventions that we attend. And we're going to kick things off with kind of a new style of how we're organizing these things. Rather than the good, the bad, and the ugly, we're doing the inspired, what creatively blocked us, and then lessons learned. So starting things off with the inspired and what various positive aspects, events, interactions, and ideas came about during the 3 days we were all gathered in Hartford. The first one is we got yet another corner booth, allowing for 2 directions of traffic, which was really nice, and I think definitely helped out considering the attendance for the weekend and how many people came into the vendor area.
Especially since we were right near the elevators and escalators that led down to the vendor area. People pretty much had to walk past us to get in.
Yeah, there are only 2 ways to get into that vendor area, basically, and we were directly in front of one of them. And I think Will mentioned it on Friday. It was our 3rd corner booth in a row for like 3 times in a row.
Yeah, we kind of lucked out this year.
We've become somewhat spoiled, I fear.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, things will get shaken up next year anyway, so it'll be good.
I already got ideas as well as to how we could evolve the display to be more space conscious in regards to Justin's concerns. Or at least kind of a negotiation to balance it out. But that's for another episode, or just maybe an NSFWN episode, there we go. Because chances are it's not going to be PG-13. And in regards to the main vendor floor, it was all one main vendor floor, and I thought it was well spaced. There was definitely plenty of aisle width, so there could be lanes of traffic for vendors on both sides, and then people going in between. And you could kind of cut across different aisles and rows as you saw fit. It was pretty navigable. The area over by the panel room and the gaming room, though, felt a little bit off to the side in comparison, mainly because I didn't really go over there that much myself. I'm not sure about others.
It wasn't so much off to the side more than it was like basically away from everything else. It almost feels like the game room and the panel room were afterthoughts, the way they were placed. But I heard on chatting with some of them was recording that the first panel of the convention, and it's a real bummer that no one showed up for the first two panels. Like that was kind of crazy for me, but kind of worked out in my favor because I met a bunch of really cool people, and I got a lot out of just those simple interactions, and that opened up me walking around and talking with more artists and more people. It also helped that there was a crap ton of people that I already knew that happened to be there that weekend.
There were a lot of old friends there.
I feel like 80% of like our contacts were there this weekend in one form or another. So it was oddly comforting. At least for me anyway. And that kind of made the convention all the better for me. Is seeing so many familiar faces.
Yeah, I know for myself it was really nice being able to talk to Wayward Raven again, even though you talked to them even more than I did. And I also recognized Monster Haiku from it was one of the dozen or so Connecticut conventions, because they all sound alike with their names. But I forget exactly which one, but I had a couple of his books and I remembered that, and we managed to talk for a few minutes, which was nice. I was completely unable to find or track down Leo from Kineticon. I think Calvin's the only one that actually saw him.
Yeah, I kind of ran into him walking around. I think it was Saturday. Yeah, bumped into him, said hello, chatted for a few minutes. It's always cool seeing him and his whole crew working on their their series Con Men. That's a pretty interesting series. So, I approve.
And of course, our other friends, E.A. Rappaport was there, Jim Taylor, Aaron Wood. Unfortunately, Rusty wasn't able to be there, which is a shame. And hopefully he's feeling better now. I haven't looked for any latest updates on that. Let's see. And this was the last convention of the year for us, but we were able to talk to the people coordinating the first convention of next year that we'll be at. Fine people at EuroMiniCon, which is always fun. And it kind of keeps the mindset flowing of this season may be over, but the other season is already organized and set. So while we kind of have 3 months not quite off, we have 3 months to figure things out.
Personally, I think the whole configuration was a little strange, but probably that's just due to how the lower portion, the lower level of the Excel Center just happens to be. So
Had a
I
very
think that was just circumstance. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it had a very basement feel, especially over in that area because where they had the panel room was technically the Excel Center's loading dock. That very same area the night before we had pulled our cars in and were unloading stuff for the vendors' room, and then they just put temporary walls up and partitions up to make the panel room and game room.
It somewhat worked, though. I mean, with the space that they had provided. We'll get more to the stuff that I didn't care for in the room when we get to the creative block section.
You mean you had issues? You had concerns and critiques?
Yeah, we'll get to that. In fact, I don't think there's a line item on that, so I may add that really quick.
In regards to our table, the writer's blocks that we have were actually very well received this time round. I'm not sure if it was the new signage that we added or just it's actually starting to click with people. But it was nice to see that people are appreciating our little writer's blocks, and everyone who was able to hold one thought that they were adorably squishy. And some even walked away with some, which was very nice. Although that means that Ed now has to start making more at some point. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing for him.
I had a new shiny sewing machine to play with, so.
True.
And plenty of fabric.
Yay.
It's always interesting that every con that we go to, different things are popular. And maybe that's just because our volume is so low that there's a low signal to noise ratio. But you know, the writer's blocks were well received this time. Last time we sold like a ton of buttons and even a bunch of magnets. Like somebody came and ordered like 12 magnets, and we had to cut them all out and make them on hand.
And I think one of the last few conventions was also a lot of the blind button bags went. I forget if that was Inconceivable or Kineticon.
And that only makes inventory management extremely frustrating. It's a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
But that's why we have an Etsy store to sort of fill out all the gaps. So if there's stuff there that's not readily available, they can get a coupon for the Etsy store and get it online.
Yep. Excuse me. Let's see. The next two, I think, well, the next one at least I can only really talk to since Ed is not available at the moment, but there were